nobody's going to trust those letters of credit or the bank wires, et cetera. You put the gold on the table, and I'll take your goods wherever you want them.
I'll take your goods. All right. Wow. Okay. We could have a conversation that goes on for days, and it is technocracy.news. Technocracy.news. Tell me about your new book.
Well, yeah, the new economics of technocracy. This is a must-read book, in my opinion. Not enough people have read it yet, but it's getting traction at this point, and I just hope that people will take it, and consider my claims, and figure out if it works for them or not. Make your own conclusions.
And, talk about, again, debasement of currency. If you were some of the richest people in America or the world, and you wanted to shake out all these hard assets that you could then tokenize, big government, big business, wouldn't you do what you could to destroy the dollar, damage the boomers, for instance, and all the wealth they've built up and equity in their homes? And then when they can't make their property tax, you can go in and cut a deal, say now you can just tap into that equity. We get 1% for the process. You get to have some, but now you're a renter, not an owner. By 2030, you own nothing and be happy. It seems like to me it's setting up to shake the trees and steal their stuff.
Yep, that's about right.
That's about right. I thought we were on the same page. All right, technocracy.news, technocracy.news, which again is why many folks are buying gold and silver, because it's something they have physical control over.
Colonel Rob Maness has a lifelong record of providing dedicated service to this nation. Having worked his way up from the enlisted ranks to full colonel, he served our country for more than 32 years. He has served as a bomber squadron commander, bomb disposal technician, Joint Chiefs of Staff operations officer, assisted the national security team with the campaign plan for the global war on terrorism. He authored the first theater nuclear war plan, and served as the Vice Commander of America's largest airborne intelligence wing. Colonel Rob Maness is a true American hero. This is Rob Maness Live.
President Trump is vowing to keep the Iran war going for as long as necessary, as Qatar's prime minister now prepares to head to Tehran to try and further negotiation efforts.
Chief foreign correspondent Trey Ying's live in Tel Aviv with the very latest. Trey.
Yeah, hey guys, good morning. The Qatari prime minister is in Tehran today to meet with Iranian officials. He is focused on finding avenues for de-escalation, according to the Qatari Foreign Ministry. We do know the visit comes as President Trump told Al Jazeera that the U.S. is achieving a very big victory, but the war will continue as long as necessary. Another report crossed today of an oil tanker being hit with an unknown projectile in the Strait of Hormuz earlier this week. The international waterway remains a location of tension in the region as the U.S. is still overseeing vessels through a southern route. Still, the IRGC warned Wednesday that the strait would not be opened until the United States accepts Iranian demands.
Look, even now, from a military standpoint, the Strait of Hormuz and the southern route is closed. As I said, our armed forces do not allow passage through it. But under this understanding, through an interactive process, Oman itself will also accept that the southern route be completely closed, and that its closure be notified to the International Maritime Organization.
We do know that parallel talks continue between Iran and Oman about control of the strait, although reports indicate Secretary of State Marco Rubio is telling allies that the United States is leaning into economic pressure on Iran following a new sanctions package that was announced earlier this week. New images from inside Iran show lines at gas stations in the country, an indication the naval blockade and sanctions are starting to have a tangible effect. Inflation numbers are also rising in Iran as the currency weakens, now holding around 2 million rial to $1 US. This is affecting the entire population of Iran.
The lifestyle this has created for us has definitely lowered the quality of the life we imagined for ourselves in terms of how we live, travel, and spend time with our friends. It has reduced the level of comfort and the ideal standard of living we had in mind. That's been its impact. It has also had a major effect on my future plans and on the business I personally wanted to start.
Regional intelligence sources tell Fox News there is concern among officials in Tehran about the possibility of renewed protests in the country over the economic situation. Guys?
Trey Yanks live for us this morning in Tel Aviv. Trey, thank you.
Thanks, Trey.
Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube and catch full shows streamed.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show. We're live on World YouTube and our X Spaces simulcast. Well, friends, putting America first is not a slogan. It's the job description. President Trump said this week he has no timetable on Iran. He's in no rush. No clock set by Tehran, Doha, or the same foreign policy class that spent 20 years losing wars and calling it a strategy. I think that's the right posture. Strength first, American interests first. We do not end a fight on the enemy's schedule. But America first also means we don't leave our own defenses as an afterthought. And drone warfare is not a future problem. You've heard me talk about this for several years now. It's here. Cheap swarms, long-range one-way attack drones, gaps over our homeland bases and our homeland itself. And if we're honest, that's true. We can't spend American blood and treasure overseas and then shrug off when our own airspace, ports, and power grid are the soft target. We have to prioritize America's defenses too. But full stop, there's more to the world than just military stuff. The same test on the dollar. Reserve currency status is real power, but it's also a real trade-off. Cheap imports and cheap debt on one side, hollowed out factories and military industrial base that can't surge on the other. Well, Vice President J.D. Vance, we'll hear from him during the show, is calling that out, and he's putting a marker down. He's forcing that debate on the dollar being the reserve currency, and I say good. The question's simple. Does the policy make America stronger, or does it make Wall Street and Beijing more comfortable? That's a big question. And this week, America lost Dolly Parton. We'll talk about that in the last segment of the show. She's a Tennessee girl who never forgot where she came from. She's as America first as anybody else, just in a different uniform. Work, faith, family, no politics, which I think is amazing for an entertainer these days, and no apology for loving this country and loving her family and where she came from. And joining me now today is attorney Mark Scaringi, former Senate candidate. He is a former Trump-endorsed RNC delegate, and he's the host of the Mark Scaringi Show, which I got to appear on a few days ago. And Mark, welcome. Let's talk about why putting America first isn't optional. And it means a lot more than just a political party's messaging, doesn't it?
Me on your show. I was so happy that you were on my show and lending my listeners your expertise and experience and your wisdom on military strategy and what's national security for the United States. I ran for the U.S. Senate many, many years ago in the Republican primary back in 2012, and I ran on an America First agenda, in particular with regard to foreign policy. And when I would give speeches at Republican events, I often wasn't received well because my foreign policy is based on an anti-interventionist foreign policy going back to kind of the Robert A. Taft, Senator Taft foreign policy, the old-fashioned version of the phrase America First. Mm-hmm. And so the positions that I take and the statements that I make today with regard to the war in Iraq in Iran were similar to the statements that I made with regard to the war in Iraq, rather contrarian to the kind of the standard, more traditional perspective of most of Republicans and certainly most in the Republican leadership. So my position with regard to what is the America First position with regard to the war in Iran today, is we never should have gone to war in the first place. I think the president was wrong to attack at all. I think he was wrong to attack when he did. I think he attacked on another country's timeline. I think Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, essentially confirmed that in a press conference he gave the day after the attacks, that the United States attacked because Israel was going to attack with or without us. And so we had to attack to better defend ourselves from the counterattack that was sure to come. So, right out of the gates there, we don't want to fight another country's war, and certainly on another country's timetable.
Yeah, I can understand where you're coming from. I entered politics in 2013, and one of my planks as a U.S. Senate candidate, too, was ending the endless war policy. On this particular conflict, I think we agree on a lot, but I think I'm different in that. I mean, I take the long view that Iran was at war with my country already. When I first came in uniform, I was 17 in 1979, and that's when they started it. So from that perspective, I have a somewhat different view. I'm not convinced that the president and his team made the full decision on Israeli intelligence, or that they were going to go anyway. But I know that we're doing a combined operation, at least initially, during Epic Fury with the Israelis, which is a phenomenal military force and capability. And that decision I don't necessarily disagree with from a strategic and a tactical perspective. But I have questions about the beginnings of this particular phase of this operation myself, because that should all be looked at and do an after-action report on it and those kind of things, as we should do on every time we get in this. And what I'm concerned about right now is this not turning into an endless war myself. And you had asked me a question about, I think it was about, how does it end? If I remember correctly, Mark. And I wanted to lead the show with you and I having a conversation about my answer to that question. Look, the challenge with war is that it gets a life of its own. That's why the founders wrote separation of powers into the Constitution about that, and they wrote about things like standing armies and had a lot of concern about it. But they also wrote the U.S. Navy into there, which is considered the strategic power projection force since its inception almost. So I think we're as a country, we're not totally anti-interventionist because the way the Navy was put in there, but we're always skeptical about ground wars because of what the founders thought about having a standing ground army. And I think that's a good place to be. Really, the citizens of the United States should expect our government to operate in those boundaries, and some folks don't think that we are, like you. But your question about how does it end, to get back to that, it's very difficult. And that's why it should be a very deliberative process to enter full-scale industrial war like what we did with Epic Fury in February of this year, is because war gets a life of its own, and the enemy always gets a vote. And that's a challenge. Saw the clip coming in, and I'll get to the answer to the question. From a military objective perspective, there are three military objectives. One is destroy their long-range and medium-range missile capability. Two is destroy their Navy. And then three was destroy enough of their defense industrial base so they can't reconstitute those forces that we were able to destroy. I think most of those objectives have been met, but the president stopped striking that target list at about 75% into it when he went into the first, the MOU ceasefire stand down for that 60 days that just passed a few days ago. So while most of those objectives have been met, there's still somewhere between 25% and whatever they have been able to reconstitute left of that. Those are the military objectives. But, there's always strategic objectives, and I think that's where things get messy. The two biggest ones, the two are really no nuclear weapons for Iran, and then stopping their proxies, stopping them from acting through their proxies around the Middle East and around the world, really, even in our own country. Those are much more difficult to define whether we've met them or not. And the jury's still out. So how does it end? I think the president, based on the reality and the fact that I don't think he wants to destroy the civilian infrastructure, you could see the people from Tehran talking, they don't look like they're in too much of a bad way from a civilian infrastructure destruction perspective. Of course, that's just one clip from a town, a city, a part of the city. So, I'm making a lot of assumption on that. But he doesn't want to do that. And I think that's why those targets are still on the table from a military perspective, objective perspective. But he has gone to reinvigorating the naval blockade, which I thought was a very good move in the first place. It takes about $500 million a day in oil revenue off of the table for the IRGC. And then this economic D-Day concept that Secretary Besson is using, I think that's a wise move too, because it gets away from doing combat operations and really puts measurements on the table and measures on the table that will have a significant effect to get the IRGC to come to some semblance of two things. One, a more normalized country that doesn't attack their neighbors or us. And two, get the United States where we can get to a point where we're satisfied that they're not going to have a nuclear weapon. I don't know how long that'll take, though. And that's the big question that a lot of Americans have, because I call it the McDonald's society. We expect to get our McDonald's order in less than 3 minutes. So we have that mentality, unfortunately. So that's my answer, I think, to the question. As good or bad as it is, and I got to take a commercial break, Mark. When we come back, we'll see another clip. I think the second clip is about drone warfare. I found this on your timeline. It's a great clip, and I think it's the NORTHCOM commander. I want to get your perspective on that, because I've talked a lot about not being ready for drone warfare inside the United States. We'll be right back with Mark Scaringi.
Take a look at the water you just poured. It looks clean. It tastes fine. But what's really in it? Lead, fluoride, arsenic, chlorine, pesticides, PFAS forever chemicals, pharmaceutical residues, and bacteria. Every single day, these toxins flow straight from your tap into your glass, into your family. It's time for Sentry H2O from Worldview Water. Sentry H2O is the ultimate water treatment technology, designed to remove harmful toxins, balance your water's pH, and enrich it with essential minerals like calcium and magnesium, the way nature intended. From commercial-scale systems to whole house filtration to crisp, delicious drinking water right at your kitchen sink and shower, Sentry H2O delivers cleaner, healthier water everywhere you need it. No plumber, no tools, no plumbing knowledge required. Perfect for homes, apartments, rentals, RVs, refrigerators, and more. Because everyone deserves access to clean, healthy water. Visit worldviewwater.net. That's worldviewwater.net.
The next threat to the homeland can be a swarm of inexpensive drones launched from inside our own borders, rather than a missile approaching from thousands of miles away. Does NORAD have the sensor coverage, authorities, and decision speed necessary to respond? And,
no.
And could you comment on that and on the gap today, the biggest gap you see?
Well, I mean, we don't have the sensors, and we're not, depending on where that swarm is going to attack, depends on whether we have any sensors at all, and so, and also whether we've got any effectors to get after that problem. So, we are ill-equipped right now to handle something like that, and obviously that is we've seen it used. We're seeing it used on a daily basis around the world, and we've got to figure out how to mitigate that threat, and but we're not there yet.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show. America first means prioritizing us and our liberty, but our common defense, folks. That's what America first is, and that's the general, I think, that's in charge of Northern Command, who has responsibility for fighting a war on American soil and in the Western Hemisphere, in the northern part of the Western Hemisphere, over American soil and those kinds of areas. And he just said it right there. We've been talking about this for several years on my show, is that we are not prepared to defend ourselves nor go on the offense in modern day warfare that we've seen develop through the Ukraine-Russia war, especially. And my guest today is Mark Scaringe. I got that clip from his timeline on X, at Mark Scaringe, by the way. Mark, you quote posted him and talked about how we were defending Israel from drones, but really we've been defending all the countries over there from drone warfare, using our assets and our people, and losing our people too. We lost 3 soldiers in the Biden administration in Jordan to drone warfare. While they're defending American forces, but also defending the country of Jordan in that aspect, and it just piqued my interest. I wanted to get your take on this concept, and we talked about it with the Iran conflict thing. Is we seem to prioritize everything else except for what we're supposed to be prioritizing when it comes to the common defense.
Well, you've been talking about this, Colonel, for a long time, and raising the awareness of the American people to this problem. I'm not a military expert. I'm a practicing attorney who has some social media attributes. And when I came upon this speech from the commander, I was shocked that the United States is not better prepared with a drone deterrence program to deter drone attacks on our homeland. And as an America first, or as any American, one would think this would be a top priority, considering what we, even lay witnesses like myself, have watched in the Russia-Ukraine war. I remember listening to Fox News and having these generals come on and talk about how it's going to be a walkover and Russia's going to dominate, any day now, any week now. And then as the weeks progress, they would say, well, maybe next week, maybe next month. But the drone attacks by the Ukrainian armed forces were just astonishing. And one would think that would have alerted the United States military to put, every available resource into America's drone deterrence. And so I was stunned by the answer that the commander gave to that question.
Yeah, and I first started talking about it aggressively in the when we found out that hundreds of drones had flown over Langley Air Force Base in December, I think it was of 2017, night after night without opposition. And Langley Air Force Base is the home of the 1st Fighter Wing and the headquarters of Air Combat Command. So all of our combat generals that are in charge of that command live there. The 1st Fighter Wing is F-22s, so they are the frontline asset. There aren't very many of them. There aren't very many bases. I could count them on one hand where F-22s are located. And we allowed that to happen over and over again. And it just got my attention. And then you see what the Ukrainians have been doing, and the Russians started meeting that. And now, drones, you could jam them and knock them down through jamming because they were running wirelessly. But now they're using fiber optic lines on each drone. And you have this no man's land akin to World War I's trench warfare, except this time it's not just trenches and dug in fighting holes and bunkers and those kind of things. It's covered with fiber optic lines. Instead of using snipers most of the time, you're more apt as a soldier to get killed on either side of this line, to get killed by a drone with a couple of pound, bomb on it that you can't defend yourself against unless you have the right shotgun or whatever it is. So and that is just the small type attacks. When we're talking now, I don't know if you've seen the videos coming out of China, but they routinely demonstrate with 10,000 drones, civilian drones, their ability to control them through AI and make complex structures out of it, like photographs and those kind of things. Just apply that to military uses and going against a country like the United States. If we don't have the ability to defend ourselves, we're wide open, and everybody knows that our grid or our ports. I live within sight of a port here that's a strategic port. And the electrical grid is. We've seen them be able to take down an electrical grid by using a rifle out in California. We've seen terrorist attacks like that where they used a rifle to shoot up a substation, and it brought a large part of the grid down. Now imagine, hundreds of thousands of drones just popping up out of nowhere, and we can't even defend ourselves.
Well, it's a stunning development, and the average American is not focused on whether or not the U.S. military has a capable drone deterrence. It's a little bit above our pay grade. We're focused on going to work and putting food on the table. So that's why it's even more alarming that this kind of got out in a Q&A session. And it certainly had me focused on whether or not our military is dedicating the resources, the time, and the energy to protect the American homeland. And it may be there were drone attacks and short-range missile attacks from Iran against U.S. bases and U.S. ships. And I wonder if the reason why maybe the U.S. Navy is a little bit tepid or a little bit reluctant about sailing up and down the Persian Gulf due to their concern about Iranian drone attacks. And there's been talk, I don't know how serious it is, about moving some of our bases away from the Persian Gulf, perhaps for that reason. So it's a big deal. And hopefully we've got our commanders on the job and figuring this out for us.
Yeah, they are. We have some defenses that we're able to use in a combat zone that aren't allowed to be used here in the United States during peacetime. We've got some policy and rules of engagement versus capability decisions to make that really aren't being made fast enough, in my opinion. I'm glad you brought that up about the bases too. Look, people in the audience should understand that this discussion about moving bases is not new. Those of us that have been in the political arena that have military experience have been calling for the U.S. bases in the Middle East to be moved out of there post the Iraq and Afghanistan wars, very, very much so, because what you see happening with Iran right now is that they became targets, and they became targets that really weren't well developed from a defensive perspective, because we were in the old mindset of, well, we're sitting out here fighting in Afghanistan and Iraq. Nobody's really reaching out and touching us. So we didn't beef them up as rapidly as we probably should have at the beginning of this. And we lost some people because of that too. So yeah, moving those bases, I think, is something that should be prioritized. And I hope President Trump does that once this conflict is concluded to our satisfaction, so that we are not sitting targets out there. And I have the same views on the troops that are in South Korea, too.
Well, I'm very glad to hear you say that. What you just said about military strategists and military experts for the past several years have been discussing the issue of maybe relocating our bases in the Middle East or removing some of our bases from the Middle East would come as news to the average American. When I think of it, and I would consider myself the average American, I look at those bases almost as permanent installations. And I can't remember the idea of removing some of those bases or shutting some of them down ever in the public discourse as an issue that's discussed on the nightly news. So it's good to hear you say that.
Yeah.
And I wish it would become a bigger part of our current and daily public discourse and discussion to discuss and debate whether or not we need those bases in the Middle East or we need those bases in any location around the world today due to what today's threats are. We know from whence we came, but times change, history progresses and moves forward. And do we need to rethink the nature and the extent of the U.S. military bases around the world? So I think it's a discussion long overdue in the general public discourse.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, I was speaking from a political, a political campaign perspective. I'll be honest with you. You know, the folks on the inside, you don't hear that discussion much because bureaucracies like the status quo, and the military's a bureaucracy too when it's not fighting wars. And they like their status quo too. So, but yeah, we need to have more of that conversation. Look, Dwight Eisenhower, when he first took command, he was the first commander of NATO after World War II. He said, look, if we're still here in 10 years, then the NATO alliance has failed. Well, the NATO alliance has failed. You know, we have good reason to be in places in the Pacific because we have American territory out there, but we also have great allies now that we should be able to depend on, and we can depend on, and we don't need to have troops sitting out as a tripwire. And that the tripwire term was first used with the troops that we left in South Korea. It's about 28,000 of them now. There's no reason for them to be there. The South Korean Armed Forces is perfectly capable of defending itself. We've trained them for years and years and years, and we should be focusing on our own defenses, which includes the Pacific, where, as I said, where American territory is, and those kind of things. And getting that right, I think, is why President Trump's new national defense strategy gets pushed back, because he put priority on the Western Hemisphere and looking towards China as a deterrent, to deter them as an adversary instead of getting into a conflict. And the old Republicans don't like that.
You know, interesting. You were talking about South Korea and U.S. troops being there, of course, since the Korean War in the early 50s. And the consensus has been that the United States military must always be in South Korea. We must always have tens of thousands of troops there. We must always have advanced armaments there to defend the South Koreans from the North Koreans, or maybe even the Chinese. And it's almost like an ideology, that whole thought process, where if you're kind of like a lone voice saying, well, maybe we should rethink this. Maybe it's not worth the risk of U.S. soldiers sitting there almost like sitting ducks. Certainly we'll lose thousands of U.S. soldiers in the initial attack. For what? And it was interesting, President Trump, who I was a huge supporter of, I was his endorsed delegate to the Republican National Convention in 2016, and he chose me because I pledged to support him and nominate him every single time, and did. I also was his lawyer. I represented him in one of the big election cases in 2020, and I've taken a lot of criticism, a lot of pushback for my strong political support for the president, and then being his attorney, representing his campaign. But some of the things that he says are like a wrecking ball. And sometimes that's good, sometimes that's bad. The recent statement he made about reducing reducing the deployment of U.S. troops in South Korea for those joint exercises was like a wrecking ball. But it kind of woke up the American people to thinking, oh, can we have a different thought about whether or not the United States of America should be guaranteeing the sovereignty of the Republic of South Korea? Can we have a discussion about it? You know, or is that still not permitted in polite society? So that's one of the great benefits of a little bit of reckless talk, some would say, about our foreign policy and our allies and our commitments to them. But on the other hand, it just opens up the issue for discussion and for debate.
Yeah, I got to take another break, Mark, but when we come back, we'll see a clip from J.D. Vance about the dollar and reserve currency. But I want to stay on this for a second and give you my thoughts on what you just said about him, because, we now have Lake America instead of Lake Ontario. And there's a reason behind that. And we all chuckle because you and I probably chuckle because we know there's a reason behind it for sure. And it's a move on the president's part. But a lot of people just laugh and go, man, the guy's crazy. But he's really not that crazy. We'll be right back with Mark Scuringa.
At a certain age, you stop chasing younger. You start protecting what helps you feel steady, strong, and well. Your body's collagen matters. It supports the structure of your skin, joints, and connective tissue. But as the years go by, your body needs more support from the inside. That's where Bella Grace Elixir comes in. Bella Grace Elixir combines Verisol collagen, the world's most clinically proven collagen, with Asteryl astaxanthin and cat's claw in a proprietary blend designed to help support the processes that reconstruct collagen, while also offering antioxidant and anti-inflammatory effects. And this isn't just for women. It's for men and women who want to age with more confidence, more care, and a daily wellness routine that supports the body from within. One simple elixir, thoughtfully formulated for whole body wellness. Take care of the body that has carried you this far. Order Bella Grace Elixir today at melissahousebg.com.
I'm wondering when I hear about the history, when I think about and read about the history of Appalachia and the resource curse, I'm struck by some of by the idea that you could make a similar argument about the reserve currency status of the United States dollar. Americans have enjoyed one of the greatest privileges of the international economy for the last nearly 8 decades, a strong dollar that acts, of course, as the world's reserve currency. You know that better than I do. Now, this has obviously been great for American purchasing power. We enjoy cheaper imports. Americans, when they travel abroad, benefit from lower costs. But it does come at a cost to American producers. I think in some ways you can argue that the reserve currency status is a massive subsidy to American consumers, but a massive tax on American producers. Now, I know the strong dollar is sort of a sacred cow of the Washington consensus, but when I survey the American economy and I see our mass consumption of mostly useless imports on the one hand and our hollowed out industrial base on the other hand, I wonder if the reserve currency status also has some downsides and not just some upsides as well.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show. It's Truth Thursday, and my guest is Mark Scuringa, the host of the Mark Scuringa Show, and a practicing attorney, by the way, and a former U.S. Senate candidate. And Mark, the reason I like that clip is it's not that new, really. It's when J.D. was a senator, but the what's new is he's now being attacked by people in that I don't know what to call them, the old Republican club, maybe wing of the Republican Party, the Wall Street Journal types, those kind of things, for talking about how dare you look at the reserve currency. But, we were talking before about the troops in South Korea, and the reason why this current president, and Vance is his VP for a reason, because he may approach things differently, but he has the same type of innovative thinking about policy issues that are long-standing, that may need to be broken free to do something new that works. But the reason why it's linked is we're $40 trillion in debt now. And if we don't need 28,000 troops and all the equipment and all the billions of dollars that goes with that in perpetuity on the peninsula of South Korea, then by golly, let's bring them home and retool that funding for something else. If it's not necessary to put it in national defense, and that's why this reserve currency issue is linked. And where he's going is, he's from Ohio, the Rust Belt, the center, the buckle of the Rust Belt, where he literally, as he was growing up, watched the jobs and manufacturing base be dissolved away by the same crowd that's attacking him. What's your thoughts on this? I mean, it doesn't seem like it should be as big a deal as those that don't think like me are making it.
Well, I think it's fascinating to me that we have a vice president who, well, then he was a U.S. senator. You're right, but even today, he has the ability to think outside of the box and approach kind of an ideological belief from a different perspective, and I think that is long overdue. It's much needed. We've got a $40 trillion national debt, as you have stated. We borrow and print money. It doesn't seem like that's ever going to end until there's some sort of massive debt bomb inflationary crisis that's going to afflict the country. And he's thinking outside of the box about maybe some long-term consequences to the reserve, the dollar being the reserve currency. And I grew up in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, kind of just on the edge of Appalachia. We would not consider ourselves part of Appalachia, but we were. And steel was the reserve currency. Steel was our coal. And the whole economy of southwestern Pennsylvania was coal and steel. And in the early 80s, when the Fed increased rates for a strong dollar to crush inflation, it was a shock to the U.S. domestic steel industry that had already been reeling in the mid to late 70s. But then when the Japanese imports flooded in with the weaker dollar, it was devastating to the Southwest Pennsylvania economy. And so I understand where he's coming from, and he's absolutely right that we need to rethink the whole idea of the reserve currency. Hopefully, it will focus the American people, our elected leaders in Washington, on taking very significant, serious steps to cut spending, to stop the printing presses, and get the budget deficit under control. Do I think that will happen? No, but at least the vice president's got us thinking about it.
Yeah, and I think they're being forced to take it seriously because of the affordability issue that the younger generations of Americans are facing. I don't know about you, but I listen to some of these young men and women talking about how they don't think that they can work. They could work 6 jobs, and they don't think that they could work hard enough to be able to even buy their first home anytime soon, if at all, in their lifetimes. That's a significant issue, and the policies that got us here is, I think, what Vance is talking about, is trying to get at those and make corrections so that these young people will be able to have the same American dream that my mom and dad had, that you and I had.
That's exactly right. And you were pointing out the negative reaction from, we'll say, the establishment, so to speak, in the Republican Party, and how they immediately jumped on him. It was remarkable. It was all over X and all over social media for a couple of days. And I'm thinking, what is this? It's just a statement that he made a couple of years ago where he's just asking a rhetorical question, like for debate purposes. And you can see where the establishment's going to line up in the Republican presidential primaries coming up. I think they're going to kneecap Vice President Vance at every opportunity, and they're going to promote Senator or Secretary of State Marco Rubio as the Republican favorite. But it's Vance who at least gives those of us in the Republican Party who are serious about significant fundamental reform of the governance of our country and foreign policy, domestic policy. He's the hope, in my opinion. I think Secretary of State Marco Rubio is just going to be more of the same of the Bush era Republican Party controlled by the establishment. And more unnecessary wars, more spending, more deficits. Rubio was very much a part of the Gang of Eight and open borders, and unlimited immigration. I think that's all. It's all going to be coming back. The leadership in the Republican Party wants it. Trump was kind of a brief sidetrack from the course that the establishment has had us on. The establishment's too afraid of Trump's continued popularity in the Republican Party and base to take him on directly. So they're going to take on his vice president, and that's how they're going to hit back at the MAGA movement, at Trump's America First movement. They're going to kneecap the vice president because they're too afraid yet to take on the president.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right to go there, because that's what's happening. He's getting attacked on this issue. I saw the people are attacking him because he had the audacity to say things that I'm sure you've said it too, is that, when Republicans get in power, they have not wielded power appropriately to put their policies permanently in place to have a permanent change effect. They have tended not to do that, and it's time to do that. And he gets called like a post-liberal, wants to be a communist. I even saw that for saying that. But we've been saying that for years. I ran on that in 2013 and 2014, the first time I ever ran for office. Well, we've got a question in the audience. I want to take that before we get to this last break real quick, Mark. Go ahead, Shell.
We have AJ, sir.
Thank you, Shell. Thank you, Colonel. My question is, well, it's not necessarily a question, just a statement. And my opinion is the strength of the next candidate that's going to be the president of the United States from the conservative side, that name hangs between the lips of Donald J. Trump and not GOP or any other entity or establishment. Your opinion is always appreciated. Thank you.
Yeah, AJ, that's a good point. With now Senator nominee Graham Nordone in South Carolina, I think the conservatives back in Ralph Norman really thought they had an opportunity there. But the president's endorsement's really, really powerful.
Yeah, that was, I was disappointed in that election result. It's unfathomable to me why Darlene Graham was appointed a United States senator. She has no experience in politics or in business or in any other realm of life other than being the sister to the deceased Lindsey Graham. You heard Darlene give her response to the question about Taiwan. She probably doesn't know where Taiwan is on the map. And it's just stunning to me that the president supported and endorsed that particular candidate over a strong conservative Republican, a longtime supporter of the president's. But that's politics, and AJ's right. President Trump still has tremendous power within the Republican Party, within the base. And AJ very well could be right that whatever words, whatever name comes out of the president's mouth with regard to who he's endorsing to be a successor very well could be the nominee.
It'll certainly have a lot of sway, and it'll be a very difficult hill to climb and overcome. We got to take a break. When we come back, we'll see a clip about Dolly Parton. She passed away yesterday. Tim Curry passed away, too, of fame that isn't quite as wholesome as Dolly Parton sometimes, but a very interesting movie, the Rocky Horror Picture Show. We'll be right back with Mark Scaringi.
You woke up with a sore throat and a low-grade fever. You know you are getting sick, so here's your choices. You can get sicker and miss work. Try to see a doctor this week or sit hours in a crowded waiting room at urgent care.
I have a smarter option for you. Open your medical emergency kit. Match your symptoms to doctor-recommended prescription in your booklet and take the right meds now and get well faster.
This is not a first aid kit. It's like having an urgent care in your home. It includes doctor-prescribed medications to treat over 39 medical issues like respiratory infections, strep throat, pneumonia, UTIs, and more.
No waiting to see the doctor and no standing in line at the pharmacy. It's right here.
Every home should have at least one medical emergency kit, and here's how to order.
Go to worldviewhealthcare.com. Your kit to treat dozens of common and serious illnesses is rushed to your door. worldviewhealthcare.com. That's worldviewhealthcare.com.
The emergency kit available at worldviewhealthcare.com. Make sure you don't have to go to urgent care. I got pneumonia. I didn't have to go. I took this last year. Stayed at home. Went to bed.
He really did. I actually interviewed a lady today who's an advocate for families that have children that have autism and other sensory challenges, and she was talking about how at Dollywood, the theme park, she was one of the first sort of major attractions to install a calming room for families to take their children to so that they could come to a theme park and enjoy it, but have a place to retreat and deal with those challenges. I've been reading all these stories. There's countless examples of stories like that where she thought, you know, we could make this a little bit better for people and make it a little bit more hospitable for people. I think Dolly Parton is a true American patriot. And, you know, she stayed out of politics, too. I saw a clip today of a reporter trying to drag her into getting political, and she just wouldn't take the bait. She stayed out of it, and she stayed true to her fan base on that. I think a lot of Hollywood and entertainment people could take a lesson from Dolly Parton, to be honest.
We showed yesterday her clip saying there's enough boobs in politics already, and she shook them at the camera.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show. It's Truth Thursday. We're live on Worldview Tube and our X Spaces simulcast. My guest today is Mark Scaringe, host of the Mark Scaringe Show, and former U.S. Senate candidate, a practicing attorney. And Mark, I couldn't not talk about Dolly Parton or Tim Curry of the Rocky Horror Picture Show and of other things, too. The Hunt for Red October comes to mind, Mr. Curry playing a Soviet sailor. But Dolly Parton, I think one of the things that I didn't realize about her is that she gave away more money than she really had in the end. You know, she could have been a billionaire, but she gave away $600 million in her lifetime and had less than about $500 million, I guess, in her war chest when she passed away the other day. That's really remarkable because she really didn't tout it. And my families, both my mom and dad's families, are large families from Tennessee that grew up the same economic circumstances as Dolly Parton's family did, and she did. So I kind of identify with that, and it really makes it, to me, is remarkable. And people are asking me, what do you think about the president putting the flags at half staff? I'm like, well, gosh, you know, we put him at half staff for Lindsey Graham, and I didn't agree with that at all, although I appreciate his service, and we named an Air Force base after him. Okay. But why not a civilian American who rejects partisan politics on behalf of the regular American people and just wants to be a patriotic American and encourage others to do that?
Yeah, I think that was a very good decision by the president, and another example of just breaking protocol that goes back forever, that nobody really understood why it's that way. And he just has this genuine expression of admiration for a woman who is essentially Americana. She's an American icon. She's almost a symbol of our country. I mean, she's up there with Joe DiMaggio, Marilyn Monroe, and Chevrolet and apple pie. When you think of America, you think of Dolly Parton, and she provided so much joy and love to the American people, to the people around the world. And of course, she had amazing talent, unquestioned talent, and certainly a lot of ambition. But like you were saying earlier, what a great humanitarian she was. One of her quotes or statements was that she counts her blessings before she counts her money. And she's in it for all the right reasons. And she gave back so much to her community and to children all across the country with her Imagination Library. Just a remarkable woman. I've always been a huge fan of hers. Of course, my friends make fun of me. I have a picture of my lovely wife, Melanie, on my desk. And so one of my attorneys in my office was at the dollar store, and he bought me a picture of we'll call her my second wife, of Dolly Parton. But she's Americana. She came from nothing, from abject poverty. She had talent and ambition and a relentless drive to improve herself and to make her way in this country, and rose all the way to the top and then some. She's the modern day Horatio Alger story, and that's what America is all about, universally loved. And so the American people are mourning our loss, and she's up in heaven now. and she's in a much better place. But she's done so much good for our country and for people around the world.
Yeah, and, I look forward to what her legacy continues to do. I hope and pray that it still has a lot of positive outcomes to happen. You know, she rejected the state of Tennessee putting a statue of her at the state capitol. I didn't know that either until I saw the video clip of it.
Yeah,
She said, "Not while I'm here."
Yeah, and she rejected a couple of presidential medals of honor from a couple of different presidents. Just ironically humble in that regard. You know, you see her on television. It's like you've lost a member of your family. You know, she was a constant presence in American culture since the late 60s, early 70s. And so a lot of people who aren't necessarily, day-to-day fans of hers and her music are still mourning her loss because she's a big part of our culture, and she's now gone.
Absolutely right. Have you noticed that in our discussion today, the three people we've talked the most about are people that aren't like power partisan politicians? Two of them, like Vance and Ms. Parton, came from nothing, abject poverty, to achieve great heights. And the other, Donald Trump, doesn't come out of partisan politics at all. And I can see all three of those people being honored for a very much longer period of time than any other person in modern times that has a lot of political. Kind of like Ronald Reagan was a similar archetype.
Independent thinkers, creative thinkers, hard workers, problem solvers. That's what we need. That's what America is all about. The establishment may not like that because they're secure in their positions of power, but we need to rethink and think anew the American system if we're going to save it. It needs to be fundamentally reformed from the bottom up.
Yeah. Well, Mark, we've got this midterm convention coming up in Dallas the week of the 8th of September in the midterms. You do a lot of thinking about politics and the state of the country and what needs to be reformed, what we've been able to achieve, but what so much still needs to be done. If you were advising the president on messaging and that kind and policy changes, new stuff that he hasn't tried yet, what are some of the things that you would be talking with him about?
Oh my gosh, that's a great question. I don't think the president would take my advice on this particular matter, but we need to bring back Trump 2.0. We need to bring back Trump from the first year and 2 months of his second term presidency. It was like he was on fire with executive order after executive order implementing the agenda that he had run on in 2024 that was America First across the board, up and down the line. And I was his greatest cheerleader. I remember listening to his State of the Union address, and it was like one remarkable statement and accomplishment and goal after another. And then when we went into Iran, we just got completely off course and off kilter. And he found himself in a very bad position right out of the gates, I think. You talked about the McDonald's minute or the McDonald's 3 minutes. I think he probably thought it was an Iranian 3 days. He'd be in and out and declare another victory and move on. But no, that's not the way war works, and you know that. And I thought the president knew that for the past 10 plus years. He's been warning us about this, and he stepped right into it. And I was most upset, disappointed with what I thought were the half-truths or the untruths so that he was using to explain the position, justify the position, talk about ceasefire, no cease, all of that. It was a terrible distraction from what his campaign promises and his messages were all about. Now he's in a very dangerous place politically, or not him personally, but the Republican Party, so unpopular now because of the president's decision there. But he's saying affordability is not an issue. Yes, it's the main issue. It is a huge issue. and Republicans have to jump right on top of that issue. And we need program after program, initiative after initiative, designed to make prices and living in America more affordable for the average American. I don't see it coming out of this president.
Do you think in the young people that I talk to that voted for him, they keep bringing up one policy that, in their view, if done properly, could have the largest impact on affordability, and that's mass deportations?
Well, and look at the first year of Trump's second term. We had significant mass deportation efforts all across the country. Now, it did cause significant opposition from these groups who were pushing back, and it looked like it was harming the president politically, and so that essentially stopped. And they got rid of what was his name, Benivo. I'm thinking I can't remember.
Bovino, Commander Bovino, Greg
Bovino.
Yeah.
I was going to say Bongino, but he's different. Bovino got rid of Bovino from U.S. Border Patrol, and then there was a significant de-escalation in that mass deportation. And so I think that's going to be off the books now. I don't think we're going to have nearly the deportation effort that we were told about and promised during the campaign for political reasons. So there's another piece of advice, and that is to turn it back up.
Yep.
Bring those mass deportations forward again. That's an issue of a fundamental reform that needs to occur. It's going to engender political opposition from the opposition, but the opposition's already going to unload on the Republican Party, no matter what we do or say. I mean, we could ask for a reduction in the rate of growth in federal spending by 0.5%, and we want to starve the poor.
Yeah, absolutely.
So do what you said you were going to do. Do what you ran on, and then convince the American people that it's the right thing. That's what true, real leadership is. And it's not doing this pivot away from these mass deportations because we had some protests and some riots and it looked bad for us in the press.
Well, you're absolutely right, my friend. Well, we got to leave it right there. Unfortunately, I'm out of time. I knew I would run out of time with you because we enjoy talking so much. But thank you so much, sir. And best place to find you is on X at Mark Scaringi, right?
That's right, yes.
All right. Well, thank you very much. Hope to have you back again soon. Love
Thanks,
this
Colonel.
conversation. Thank you. And Monday, More War Monday, L. Todd Wood, CEO of CDM Press, will be with me. We got some stuff to talk about, and it's not all about trigger pulling. So there's some issues out there that we haven't been talking about on More War Monday that we will be talking about this coming month. I'll see you then on Worldview Tube.
You're watching Worldview Tube, built on the 35 years of Worldview books, documentaries, research, high-profile interviews, and the radio and television broadcasts of Brannon House.